Good afternoon, good morning, or good evening, and welcome. Thank you for joining us for today's webinar hosted by SJF Immigration and Investment. We'll wait a few more minutes so that more attendees can join us. Can I just do a quick sound check? Can everyone hear me all right? Just drop a quick yes in the chat if everything sounds good on your end, please.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Okay, that's great. We have a few answers here. Maybe just one more minute to see if we have anyone else joining.
Yeah.
Okay, should we start then? Okay, perfect. So welcome once again. Today we'll be diving into Portugal's Golden Visa with a focus on investment fund strategies and key legal insights. The session will last around 30 minutes, followed by a 15-minute Q&A at the end. Feel free to drop your questions in the chat at any time, and we'll do our best to address as many as we can during the Q&A. And before we dive in, here's a quick introduction to who we are. SJF Immigration and Investment provides personalized strategic immigration services, specializing in relocation and residence by investment programs. Our mission is to make your journey seamless, offering everything from legal and tax advice to concierge and investment support. Now it's my pleasure to introduce today's expert speakers, Sandra Jardim Fernandes, our Head of Legal Affairs and expert in immigration law, real estate, corporate law, and investment funds, and Dr. Miguel Cardoso, senior investment advisor and expert in investment funds, equity capital, and international projects. So I'll let them introduce themselves and share a bit more about their roles and insights. Sandra, Miguel, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Clara, for the introduction. Welcome to SJF. It's the first webinar we are doing. I hope we will be able to do many more. But the idea is to reach more people and to be able to explain about the Golden Visa program. But going back to myself, I've been an immigration lawyer for since the very beginning of the Golden Visa program, so at the very beginning, like 12 years ago, and we had a lot of we had a lot of different stages in the Golden Visa. As you probably know, we worked more with the real estate investment during many years, and that's why I came from the real estate investment itself to the immigration based on investment. And it's been a delightful 12 years working with a wonderful team, and we are now 14 people working at the immigration department, and we are here to serve you. And I believe the most important thing is to reach people, to be able to offer tailor-made solutions, and to be close to the clients when they are choosing the path that they want to go through when they select an immigration program. And that's why SGF was born, coming exactly from this need of having a one-stop shop and with tailor-made solutions for everyone. It was a dream come true some years ago, and with me today, and because it's a Golden Visa Funds webinar, we have Dr. Miguel Cardoso, is a very preeminent expert here in Portugal, and I'm delighted to introduce him, and he will talk a bit about himself as well.
Thank you so much, Sandra, for your kind words. Hello, everybody. Welcome to this webinar. It's a pleasure to be here with you to share some thoughts and some ideas and to give you some confidence about the program. So, as Sandra said, my name is Miguel Cardoso. My background is a little bit different. I'm a chemical engineer with a PhD in biotechnology and a postdoc in mechanical engineer, but I've been working in finance and corporate for most of my life. So I came back to Portugal 12 years ago. I'm Portuguese, but I lived in the Netherlands, in Brazil, in Spain. And then I came back 12 years ago. I started two companies that I ran for 12 years, and I had a very successful exit in 2023. And during all this time, I also worked with investment funds and venture capital, and I perform the due diligence for the companies where the funds want to invest. And I'm in the advisory board of several of the participated companies. So Sandra asked me to join this team and this work 2 years ago. It has been a very interesting ride because most of the investors, they need to feel confident on the program. They need to feel confident on the investments that they are doing. So it's not only to read some documents, and this makes us an expert in financial investments in a country where we don't know the language, we don't know the economy, we don't understand the market dynamics. So it's very important to make sure that everybody has the right follow-up and all the questions are clarified before the investment is done. So this is my role here. I help the investors making the best choice according to their profiles, and this is what we are going to cover here today.
Next. So what is the Golden Visa program? I've been talking about it for the last 12 years. and it's still something. It's a program, is a residency immigration program based on investment. I know that you know that there are a few all over the world. I personally have been invited to be a speaker in different international conferences. Generally, I as part or as a speaker in a panel that is focused on residency by investment. And because of it, I still believe that Portugal is one, if not the best program on residency by investment, not only because of the not only because of the time length, but also because of the eligibility to become a Portuguese citizen going through the program. And if you compare that in even with other European Union, especially European Union countries that also offer residency by investment or even citizenship by investment, we still have Malta doing that. The amount of the investment or the government fees and the length, the time length, and to get to the Portuguese passport is different from the Portuguese. And so if you combine all of that and the eligibility of family members, we can go through that as well. It makes it a very, very interesting program. So how it works? The Golden Visa residency is a residency by investment. So the investment has to be done before the residency, the immigration application. So we need to prove that the investor did the investment before the application. Nowadays, and because the property investment was withdrawn from the program, the most popular investment is clearly the fund investment. And the funds have been growing, the number of funds in Portugal that are doing investment in different areas of the economy. The minimum amount of the investment is 500,000 euros. What is important that everyone knows is that one investment may benefit many family members, because with one investment, it's possible to bring the spouse or the partner, the parents, the parents-in-law, the children, and even adult children. Adult children are eligible, even if they are, we've been successful in adult children application as long as we can prove that they are still studying, that they are still single, and they are financially dependent on parents. With those three conditions, we can, keep the adult child in the same application of the main investor. And that's been very successful from our experience with our clients. We have thousands of clients nowadays, and definitely this is a wonderful legacy for children, adult children specifically, because they can be studying wherever they want in the world, which doesn't happen with other immigration programs that we were also working at the SJF. The most well-known benefit is to be able to travel in all Schengen countries. We have 26 countries that are Schengen, and so whoever gets the residency not only can work, study, have access to the public health system, etc., in Portugal, but also can travel in all Schengen countries. So in theory, it's possible for someone who gets this kind of residency visit Portugal and still travel all over Europe throughout the year without having what the law states is that resident permit holders should, from European Union countries, can travel in Schengen countries and not be there more than 3 months in each country, but sometimes it depends on how those countries control their borders. So what I'm saying is that it's a free pass to Europe, definitely. And the minimum stay in Portugal, because the minimum stay in Portugal is 14 days in each 2-year period, it's just basically holidays. That means that, as I said, it's possible to use that resident permit to travel throughout the Schengen countries. Next. Well, I'm going to very quickly, because I do believe that this webinar will be more focused on the fund options, and Miguel Cardoso will talk about it. In terms of the process of a roadmap, I could describe as I said, the investment has to be done. Once the investment is done and we have all the paperwork related to the investment, we will be able to submit. In terms of personal paperwork, besides the paperwork that will be necessary for a bank account opening, and it's important to always have a bank account, either a personal, or it can also belong to if the management company of the elected fund has a global custodian bank account, it's possible to also deposit the units of the funds that were invested in that account. So, but for golden visa purposes, we always need to have a bank account where the units are deposited. Either it's a personal bank account or the management bank account when it exists and has a custodian global bank account with segregated accounts in our client's name. So we will need always to have a bank account where the units were deposited to be able to submit the application. So besides then, once the application is submitted, and on a personal level, sorry, I forgot to mention it, we will always need the FBI report. And I mean, it's a criminal record, depending where the country you are coming from. But if you are coming from US, we need on a federal level, and it has to be legalized with the apostille staff. That's the main document, besides the investment, that we need to prove for the submission. I know that many of our clients go through a hassle with documentation, but that's the documentation needed for bank purposes, for compliance, both for funds and for bank account opening. But for the immigration itself, what we need to prove is that we had the money came from abroad to a Portuguese bank account, and that the compliance was done, and also that the investment was executed, and there is no criminal report, a criminal report with no crime, basically that, a clean one. And that's what we need to submit the application for the main investor. And each family member, we need, of course, to legally prove the ties to the main investor. That means the spouse, we need to prove marriage certificate or partnership proof, or or children's birth certificate, or when we are dealing with parents of the investor or the investor's spouse, we need to also prove with birth certificate only at that time. If we have parents, then we need a birth certificate from the investor or from the spouse in order to prove the family ties, and then submit the application of the family members. The application process was recently changed this year. We have now what we call a new platform, and the idea is to have more digitally done process than it used to be. So we used to have a digital. We used to have to do digitally submit all the documents, but then all the documents had a physical file that we needed to handle and deliver at the immigration department. At the moment, because of the change, we need to submit and upload absolutely all the documents in the system. And what we do when we go to biometrics, that should occur around 4 to 5 months after the submission date, according to the new timeline that was announced by our government. When we have the biometric session, which, by the way, is the only time that it will be mandatory to be in Portugal, both the investor and family members, at that time, we need to prove that those documents are there. We go to the biometrics with the physical file, we show it, but the physical file will come back with us, last lawyers. And so what the member at the immigration department will look at the stuff, what they need to make sure is that whatever is uploaded is also exists on the physical file. Why is this important? Because during many years, this physical file was the most important, and there were not many inspectors going through the whole process. Basically, they were based in Lisbon and Porto, and it was very difficult mainly because of the amount of applications that had to deal with. So with this new format, with this new platform, and just by combining and just by checking, there'll be more inspectors throughout our country in different cities that will be able to inspect and do all the digital documentation and finally get approved. So the idea of this government with this new timeline and new process is to have more people, going through the files and approving the files, and of course reducing the timeline, because we had a very long timeline, but first because of the pandemic times, and then because of the lack of staff, and especially because of this physical demand of the file that had to be delivered and go. Even if we did the biometrics in other parts of our country, the physical file would have to then go to the main cities, and only a few inspectors could go through that. That's why there was a huge delay. So as it is now, it should be quicker. Of course, we had a waiting list, so that's why it takes a little bit more time to to match the new timeline. But the idea is to be able to have to go back to between 9 months to 12 months of, I'm talking from the submission date until final approval. That's the idea of this new process. We also, I was, in terms of due diligence, I will talk a little bit further when we talk about the funds, what we do, lawyers, in terms of the investment itself. And on the people, it's mainly about going through the compliance and analyzing all the documentation. The banks here are important. That's why it's mandatory in this program that all money that is transferred to specifically for this investment always has to go through the compliance of a Portuguese bank. No matter if it's the personal bank account or it's the funds bank account, and it has to go through. But as I said, also the funds themselves, they have their own compliance department, and we and in law firm we also do the compliance work. So there's a lot of entities here going through and doing the due diligence to make sure that we have the right applicants, and and they can go forward with their own application. And so far, to do in a very quick way, as I said, we still believe that it's a very good program, and especially after the change in our nationality citizenship law, where the timelines counts from the submission date and not from the time that the permit is issued. That made a big difference, especially during those times that were taking a long time to get the first permit approved and the card, which is the ultimate goal of our clients. So basically, the challenge that we lawyers had to deal with was all these delays and complaints, and even we had to go through litigation in some cases to get appointments. That's the truth of what happened. But we are all, very confident of what this new of the recent government decision, and to change increase the number of people, the staff at the immigration department, and change the procedure, and have more people involved in the approval phase of a golden visa. Next. Now I will ask Miguel Cardoso to talk about the funds.
Thank you, Sandra. Next slide, please. So I will try, since I don't know the background of the attendees of this webinar, I'm going to start by explaining a little bit the concept of the investment fund. It's similar. What I think that most of the participants are coming from US, so I will use the comparison with the United States, because perhaps it's easier for the attendees to understand what I'm saying. So basically, the investment fund is a collective investment organism where we buy participation units that will be managed by professional investment managers and fund managers that need to be approved and are highly regulated by the Portuguese Security Commissions. which by all that matters at this moment is more demanding than the American one, I can tell you that, for the type of tight regulation that it has, and the need for auditing and reporting from the funds and fund managers to the security commissions. It obeys the European laws and is very safe and considered as a good option for investments at the moment. I can tell you that the last forecast from the specialists are predicting something like between 10 and 50 billion euros of investments in Portuguese funds in the coming 5 years. Because most of the investors that try, they are very, very surprised with the performance of the Portuguese funds and the way that the Portuguese economy is growing. And even American pension funds are coming to Portugal at the moment and investing. Big pension funds from UK and from US are coming to Portugal and investing in our funds. You have in the context and in the concept of funds, you have the traditional equity and bonds, which are usually called open funds, and you have venture capital, which is the most interesting at the moment because the Portuguese economy presents big opportunities for investment at the moment. The limitations for the Golden Visa application, the law states that you need the fund where you invest, for the fund to be eligible, it needs to invest at least 60% of the assets in Portuguese companies and cannot invest in real estate. So everything related with real estate is not eligible for Golden Visa. These are the two limitations that we have to take into consideration when we select the funds where to invest. But then you have funds for all the tastes and colors and smells that you can imagine. You have, because most of the funds, they were created by the fund managers, but you also have the promoters. So I have a big project. I'm a company. I don't want to invest. I don't have the capability, or I want to bring more capital. I want to raise more capital than the one I have. So I hire a fund manager. It has to be a professional fund manager authorized by the Security Commission. And I act as a promoter of a new fund for a specific project or of a specific area. In the moment in Portugal, we have more than 50 eligible funds for the Golden Visa. And most of them, you have the ones more conservative, where the risks are much lower, and you have returns of 3-4% per year. And you have others where the risk is also mitigated, but they can deliver up to 30% returns. Most of the closed funds, the venture capital ones, which usually are the preferred for the Golden Visa applicants, they have a period of investment between 5 to 10 years, depending on the funds. But you always have the option, because the fundraising period usually is between 2 and 3 years. So you can enter in the fund that already has 2 years of duration. So it has like 7 years in front of you that will allow you to run all the Golden Visa process and to have everything until the residence with the same participation units and having your returns accumulated until the moment where the fund matures and returns all the investment. Some of the funds allow you to have the distribution of dividends in an early base. Others, they accumulate and they capitalize your dividends during the period subsequent to the year when they were distributed, or at least distributed to the participation units. Then inside this, it's very important to understand the profile of the investor. Some people are more comfortable with the risk. Some people does not like risks and prefer something more conservative. You can always try to find something that is more close to you. I can give you as an example, if you are a Bitcoin enthusiastic, you have funds for Bitcoins. If you are a football fan, you have funds for football. If you are a fan of circular economy and ecology, you have funds with very interesting returns that obey very strict ESG rules. So that's why it's so difficult for the investors when they try to come by themselves and try to fund the right investments. When they try to find it by themselves, this is a little bit a maze, and you will lost yourself in the middle of all of this. So the service that we try to provide here, and that was the challenge that Sandra gave me, launched to me a couple of years ago, is we have to find a way that follow the investors, to give them the confidence, the necessary confidence, to clarify all the doubts and to be with them in all the process until the investment, to make sure that they feel that this is not just an investment for the golden visa. When you look at this opportunity, don't look at this only from the golden visa point of view, because in fact, some of our clients, after the golden visa process, they increased the amount that they have in Portugal because they were having interesting results, interesting enough to justify to have the money here instead of other markets. So this is what we offer here, is a personalized experience. What we organize, we presented the funds according. I'm not going to present 56 funds to everybody because it's craziness and you lost yourself in the middle of it. But we will select the funds that make more sense according to your profile and the type of investments that you are aiming, because we have customers, especially from the Middle East, that for them it's very important to have an early return, an early distribution of dividends, because they need this. Other investors that they will take the money from here to invest somewhere else. So it's more interesting if the fund is performing well. It's much more interesting to capitalize the dividends during the period and at the end increase their assets. So all of this is a strategy that we are going to discuss together once you enter the process. And we don't give financial advice. This is not our role. Our role is to make sure that you have all your doubts clarified, that you explain all the strategies of the funds, that we introduce the fund managers, because the funds that you select, we will organize meetings with the fund manager, the people that is going to manage your assets, because at the end of the day, it's all about trust. You need to trust the people that is going to manage your assets. You do all the questions, they present all the information about the fund, and I will be with you in all the process. And we will have conversations during the meeting with the fund managers, before the meeting with the fund managers, and after the meeting with the fund managers. And if you need to speak to them 2-3 times, we will organize for it until you feel comfortable enough to invest. After that moment, my work is done and I pass the ball to Sandra, because Sandra will then perform the due diligence to the fund to make sure that everything is according to the law and to the demandings of the golden visa regulations. And from my side, I do a technical due diligence to make sure that there are no lines, there are no writtens between the lines that can jeopardize your application. As an example, I can tell you that there are some borderline funds that they have legal opinions about the eligibility of it. But I'm going to explain to you where the risks are. And then if you decide to move forward, at least you know what is in stake. All of them are safe. All of them are regulated. All of them are compliant with the Security Commission's demandings. So we will not introduce to you any fund that is not managed by professional fund managers duly authorized to manage this type of collective investment organisms. So this will save you the time and will give you the confidence to invest in a country that you don't understand the language, you don't understand the economy. So this is our role and what we will do during all this process. I can tell you that so far we have been very happy, because most of the investors, after the selection, they decide to invest more in Portugal and they continue to do so. So it's my pleasure to help you even after this process is completed. So next. So as I was explaining, we have funds for all the tastes. Okay, you have funds more conservatives, index funds that basically invest in the public companies, in shares of public companies. We have funds that invest in bonds, government bonds or private companies bonds. We have venture capital that is helping converting the Portuguese economy, which is based on small and medium enterprises, most of them familiar, and they suffer from the need of professionalization of the management. And this is a great opportunity for the funds to invest in the companies, to professionalize the management, and then to sell it, not in Portugal, but to foreign investors, because in parallel with the golden visa, Portugal is becoming very attractive to big investors that are using Portugal as a gateway to the European market due to the language, the facility, the price of the labor, the qualification of the Portuguese human resources and the foreign human resources that are coming to Portugal. And especially the IT and the new technologies and science, the number of companies is increasing a lot. And this is a big opportunity for the investors as well. So most of the Portuguese companies, they are being bought by the funds, they are being professionalized in the management. So the father was an entrepreneur, but the son and the daughter, they don't want to continue the family business. So the father needs to professionalize the management of the company to make sure that it endures after his retirement. And the amount of companies in these situations with very interesting returns and is what is making the big investors come to Portugal as well. To add to this, we have also the energy, the renewable energy, especially the solar energy, which is a very big opportunity for investment in Portugal. And we have several funds that are betting in solar energy. Some of them were created by American investors that came to Portugal and are living here for more than 15 years, and they are investing seriously on these areas. We have technology, we have Bitcoins, as I mentioned before, we have ocean economy, so the blue economy, we have biotechnology, we have several companies of biotechnology coming to Portugal. Some of them, I can tell you, that were sold recently for over $1 billion. So, and the multiplication of the invested capital was above 8 times. So you cannot look at this only from the perspective of the golden visa. The golden visa is the cherry on the top of the cake. If you have your investment in US, your investment will be as safe, at least, as it is in US when you invest in Portugal. It's a very stable market. It's a political stability, social stability. We don't have fluctuations on the Portuguese debt. So the forecast for the Portuguese debt in the coming 10 years will be that we will have a surplus. We are growing. So it's a very stable market for the investors. And the cherry on the top of the cake is the golden visa that will allow you to come to Portugal or to use Portugal as a gateway to Europe. The trick is to make everything tailor-made. When you do the investment, and I see that Eric made a question here in the Q&A about what will happen to the investment if the golden visa is not approved. In this case, the part of the approved of the golden visa, I will let for Sandra to answer. The part of the investment, what will happen is, Eric, you will make a lot of money, your investment is safe, and at the end, you will take your money back together with all the dividends that you got from it. Because it's an investment. Where is your money? Is in the bank, is in applications in US. Instead of that, it will be in an application in Portugal that probably will give you more return than the one that you have in US, especially because it will be in euros. And if the euro continues to valorize, when you convert it to dollars, you will make even more money. So I think we can pass to the next slide.
Well, I believe that, well, we talked about the eligibility of the funds. What we do, and as Miguel was saying, we always do the legal due diligence on the funds, all funds that we work with, even if it's new funds that our clients are coming in. We always go through every step of legal compliance. We do the legal compliance, make sure that and illegal compliant, and we do all the due diligence. Typically, the due diligence legal report mentions several topics. It's like from the eligibility of the fund according to the immigration law, which, as Miguel says, has to 60% of the investment of the fund has to be done in Portugal, in Portuguese companies, cannot be done in real estate even indirectly. So the fund cannot invest in a company that is on real estate business. The investment policy, the liquidity conditions, the fund registration, if it's okay, the maturity of the fund has to be more than 5 years, the investors' rights, the fund manager obligations. So we go through all that, which is we need to go through, who is auditing the companies that are auditing the funds, who are the team managers. And the good thing about Portugal, as I could say is that it's a small country. We know, we easily know who is in charge, who is managing the different funds, and who can we rely more than that. That's why we go through not only on the legal side, but also on the technicality and the experience of the team that is managing the funds as well. So to answer the question, I could also answer the question that he did on the legal side, to let you know, we never had one problem throughout all these 12 years with thousands of applicants. We never had any problem with the application, because if it's something that we are very keen on, is that we do all this legal due diligence. And on the legal side, the eligibility side, on the investment side, we will only submit if everything is okay. So we never had any problem on the investment side. The only problem that might occur during the approval process can only be on the personal level. If there is some news on criminal report, something like that will not be accepted by the immigration authority. That's the only possibility of something like that happening. We never had any problem based on the investment itself throughout all these years. Next.
Okay, perfect. Thank you, Sandra. Thank you, Miguel. That brings us to the end of the presentation. We will now move on to the Q&A session. So once again, please feel free to ask any questions in the chat if you haven't already done so. So I will start by reading one of the questions in the Q&A. I am a United States citizen. Could you speak briefly on economic or tax treaties, if any, in place that would provide flexibility for me to open a manufacturing facility in Portugal for goods bound to the EU and US?
Andre, you will make me speak for hours about this. This is very interesting. Thank you for your question. I have a problem that it's very difficult to answer at this moment due to the negotiation between the new presidents of US and Europe. We are negotiating at this moment several treaties that include what you are saying. So, as you know better than we do, this is a bit unstable at the moment, but I believe that in 2-3 months we will have big news about this. The negotiations between US and European Union are taking place right now, and this is my personal belief. Okay, we will see what will happen. Probably you know better than I do what is the final goal of President Trump, but I believe that we will have a zero tariff in the end of these negotiations between EU and US. Nevertheless, we have treaties between Portugal and US regarding the double taxation. Sandra can talk a little bit more about that from the legal perspective, but from the financial point of view, we have special treaties with US since at least the 60s, because don't forget that the Azores and the Azores Islands were part of Portugal, where one of the most important naval bases of US and the Air Force of US was using in the middle of the Atlantic. So we always have special relations with US. It's a good idea. I can tell you that there are several investors doing exactly what you are asking and coming to Portugal to start manufacturing for US and for Europe. So this is a long conversation that we can have, but we have tax treaties to avoid double taxation between US and Portugal. We have now the problem of the tariffs, but as I told you before, I believe that in a couple of months, we will have 0% tariffs between US and Europe. But this is my conviction at this moment. Let's see if I'm wrong or not.
On the double treaty, we have double treaty agreements, as Miguel was saying. So on the tax level, if we're talking about like dividends, it really will depend whether you will be a tax resident in Portugal or not. If you will become a tax resident in Portugal, you will pay dividends in Portugal as well. But no matter if you are a resident, I know that in US you also have your taxes to pay, but you will not pay double. That's the most important thing to say. Of course, corporate tax will be paid in Portugal, depending on the region. We have good news, but on the autonomous in the islands, the corporate tax decreased 30% compared to the mainland tax. And we still have the international business center for specific activities, but besides that, which is even a lower tax. But on a general level, on taxation in Portugal, it's been reduced, and we have some regions that are even have even lower tax. But the most important thing is that you will not pay double taxation at all. That never happens. Now,
Sandra, sorry, let me just add something that I think it's important and I forgot to mention. These investment funds for the Golden Visa, from the fiscal point of view, they are also very interesting, because in Portugal, for non-residents, the tax rate over the dividends and the profits is 0%. And if you are a Portuguese resident with fiscal residence in Portugal, you only pay 10%. So
when we're talking about the funds, yes.
So for the Golden Visa applicants, that in most of the situations, they will not be fiscal residents in Portugal, the tax rate in Portugal is 0%. Nevertheless, you know that as an American, you have to pay it in US always. So this is something that we cannot avoid. But at least in Portugal, is 0%.
For funds, not for
exactly.
companies that are that having manufacturers here in Portugal. Yes, but for funds, it's very, very interesting on the tax point of view, for sure. So as Miguel was saying, there's no tax being paid if you're not tax resident in Portugal, and the investment is done through a fund. You will not pay taxes in Portugal at all.
As a matter of fact, some of the investors, they came to they want to invest in Portugal, and instead of establishing a company, what they do is they create an investment fund, and they create the company via the investment fund. So they can leverage the capital, they can increase the capital by raising money from small participants or golden visa applicants, and then they create the companies after that.
Happened. No.
Great, thank you. The next question was actually on taxation, so I believe that has probably been answered, but if there's anything else that you'd like to be specified, please let us know. So we move on to the next question. What are the costs entailed in the program?
Basically, the cost on the legal side, we have the legal fees, of course. We have we have on I'm talking about the legal side, and on the golden visa process itself. There are the legal fees from and to present that typically go from A to Z, so every stage of the process, from tax number creation, assisting on bank account openings, checking all the documentation, submission, going to biometrics until there's a final approval and getting a residency card. But besides that, then we have the government fees as well. And the government fees are for each family member. That's very important to say. Although we work with packages for the whole family on the legal terms, on legal fees, on the government level, there is a fee for on the general terms per person only for the government fees. We should be talking about 12,000 euros, but it's not paid immediately. It's only paid on the first stage, half of it. And when they go nowadays, it's when they go to the biometrics after the first validation of the application, and then the other quarters too. The other half is paid two times, sorry, at each renewal, because the program is designed for 6 years, 2 years. So when you apply, you get your first residency for 2 years. And when we renew, in order to be able to renew, you need to keep the investment. That's something that we need to prove, and pay again half of the remaining fees. So the total would be, the total payment would be done in like 5 years time. So it pays off, but it's per person. We will give all that information, very accurate, with the exact amount. And what we usually do, we try to calculate and send to our clients exactly, or prospect clients, the exact amount, so that they have the idea of how much would that cost is.
Thank you, Sandra. So just another follow-up question from Andre. Thank you for your response. Is there a way for me to follow up on this question in person in Portugal? So that was referring to the previous question on economic tax treaties. So if you could offer any guidance on possible follow-up in person in Portugal?
Yes, of course.
You just have to book a consultation. Book a call, and we will gladly speak to you.
Perfect. Thank you. And another just clarification from Enrique. Did I understand it correctly? If I make an investment in a fund, no taxes.
If you are not fiscal resident in Portugal, no. The tax is 0%. The tax rate is 0% for non-residents and 10% for fiscal residents in Portugal. That's one of the reasons why so many foreign investors are coming to Portugal with their investments.
Thank you, Miguel. And following question, my partner and I are not married. Will it be necessary to prevent individual application or together?
No, you can do it together as long as we can prove that you've been together for more than 2 years. It always we need some declarations, notarized declarations. It depends on the documents that we have to prove that you've been living as partners for more than 2 years, many times like joint bank accounts or joint, ownership or lease agreements, etc. There are several ways, and we will guide you on that one, but it's possible as long as we can prove that you've been together for more than 2 years. Yes. Only one application for the 2 year.
Thank you, Sandra. Are there any other questions that you'd like to be answered?
I think we had somebody, asking some questions. I don't know if it was in the chat. I can't remember, but we can go through it. Do you have it with you, the questions?
Yeah, so we just have another question that just came up in the chat. Standard management fees for the funds.
Well, we have usually you have the management fee, which is charged in an early base, but is not charged in addition to your investment. So it's taken from the profits, and usually is between 0.5% and 2%. You have more specific funds, more demanding funds that go up to 3%. But usually it's between 0.5% and 2%. And then you have the subscription fees, which depends a lot on the fund. You have subscription fees that go from 1% to 4%. But usually now for the Golden Visa applicants, they allow for this value of the subscription fee to be included in the 500,000 euros. So you don't have to add it on top of it. They are included. But you only have to worry about the first investment, because then the return of the funds and the dividends will cover the management fees.
Great, thank you for that, Miguel. We have another question. Is it mandatory to invest the total amount in a single fund?
No. One of the good things about this law, and because this was very important, most of the investors, they want to mitigate the risk by diversifying the investment. So you can invest in different funds and in different fund managers. After your investment, each one of the fund manager will issue a declaration stating the amount that you invest with them, and we at the SGF will collect all the declarations from the fund managers, and the total needs to sum the 500,000. So you are not forced to put all the money in one single fund or in one single fund manager. You can divide and split the risk, divide to mitigate the risk.
We just need to follow the minimum investment amount. So each fund has different units as a minimum investment. We just need to follow the investment, and the total has to be 500. Okay.
But I don't advise, this is my personal opinion, I don't advise to invest. Most of the funds, they have a minimum investment of 100,000 euros. I don't advise you to do more than 3 or 4, because otherwise you have to deal with 3 or 4 different fund managers, compliance, QIC processes, and it's a mess to deal with all of that.
I know, yeah. That's a good point, Miguel, because we have that with our clients when they're choosing 3, 4 funds. They complain a lot about the different compliance, but we need to go through it. There's no other way.
Usually they start with 4 funds, and in the middle of the process, they are so annoyed with the amount of documents that they need to deliver that they in the middle of the process, they say, okay, we will stick with the 2 first that approved this, and we'll put all the investment there.
Yeah, that already happened. Yeah.
Another question will be, what happens if a fund matures before the Golden Visa process is complete?
Yeah, that can happen. This usually happens if there's some delay on the process. So, as Sandra explained, you have the first application, and then after 2 years, you have a renewal. And then after 5 years, you can apply for the residence in Portugal. Please correct me if I'm wrong, Sandra. This is your
Well,
field, not mine.
yeah.
So
Yeah, but
what?
it's true. When they apply, it will take at least 1 year to get the
Yeah.
first residency, and each residency will be issued for 2 years, and then renewed for another 2 and renewed for another 2. So the minimum in the program would be that amount. But for the citizenship eligibility, because we are counting now from the submission date, that means that you still renewing. It can happen this way. So you only did 1 or 2 renewals. You're starting the renewal, and you're already applying for citizenship because you became already eligible to do so. So it really depends, but I always advise to keep the residency while the citizenship process is ongoing, if possible. But with these new timelines, it's possible to, still be under the normal timelines of the golden visa. And
so following the clear explanation from Sandra, imagine that you invest 500,000 euros in the fund, which has a maturity of 6 years, and by some reason there's a delay in the process, and you need to have it for another year. What will happen is when the fund matures, you will get the money plus the dividends on your account, and you need to buy participation units of a new fund to complete the process. What matters is you have to have participation units during all the process. But imagine you invest €500,000 now in 2025, and in 2031 you get €1.5 million on return. So on top of they multiply your investment 3 times. So you don't have to invest all the money again. You only have to invest the 500 initial 500,000 euros that you invest initially. The rest is yours, and you don't have to invest it again.
correct.
Thank you for that answer. We have another question, and that is, can the value of the fund participation units influence the eligibility of the investment for the golden visa?
Well, this is a very interesting question.
Yes.
If we are talking about the venture capital or closed funds, that will not happen. Because when you buy the participation units, you have an estimation that is determined to present to the security commissions about the value of the participation units, but they will not change the value until the maturity of the fund, when all the dividends are distributed. When you are talking about open funds, index funds, for instance, where the funds are investing in public companies, in shares of public companies, then the valorization of the participation units is made in a daily basis and is public. This means that in 2 years, if the value of the shares that constitute the portfolio of the fund decrease the value, then the value of your participation units will be reduced. That's why it's complicated to invest with open funds. I can tell you that in the last, I have some personal investments both here and US, and I can tell you that since the beginning of the year, my participation units lost 30% of the value. So if I need to ask a declaration from the fund manager at this moment, the value of my participation units is not the same that I invested in the beginning. But hopefully this is just a period and it's going to valorize. So this is the risk when investing with open funds that put the money in shares of companies that fluctuate. That is always the reason why I advise the closed funds for the golden visa.
Yes, but we have, we've been successful even in 1 or 2 cases. Well, we don't have many, but we already had clients choosing open-ended funds, but so far so good. We didn't have any problem about an issue because as you said, we are in a very good economic phase in Portugal.
Yeah. Unfortunately, the American fund, you know better than I do, that the shares in US are devalorizing a
Mhm.
little bit. So this is a real risk that we have to take into consideration.
Still another?
There is a question, can we transfer the funds directly to the investment fund?
Yes, from your account.
Yes. Yes,
Sandra,
yes.
do you want to?
Yes,
Do you
it's
want to?
possible. And we've been having this question from many clients, especially from US, very recently because of the exchange rate. If they, if they can transfer directly the money to the funds without going through their Portuguese bank accounts. And that is happening nowadays. And the majority of the funds, I would say nowadays, all the funds, the majority of the funds are accepting a transfer directly from their account in US to the fund. And so it will be the fund's bank that will issue that declaration that we need for the golden visa process to prove that the money came from abroad and to a Portuguese bank account. So we'll have that document, but for the golden visa application. So it's yes, the answer is yes, it's possible to transfer. Of course, as I said, we still need to go through the opening of a bank account, a personal bank account, especially if there is not a management custodian global bank account, and some of the funds have a global custodian, but they are not eligible for American clients because of the FATCA compliance. So it really will depend. Each case is a different case. We are making all our best to work, especially for American clients. We are working with all the investment banks that work with American investors, and somehow splitting and choosing so that the bank accounts are open more quickly. But it always will take time. Of course, they need to go through compliance, and it will take time. So that's why we need a way to go through it. Sorry, is to transfer directly to the funds. Yes. Is there anything else?
So I don't think there are any more questions for now. So I would like to thank everyone who joined us today. And of course, special thank you to our speakers, Sandra Jardim Fernandes, Dr. Miguel Cardoso, for sharing their knowledge and expertise. And as a thank you for attending, we'll be sending you a follow-up email with our exclusive offer, a consultation call with Sandra. We hope today's session helped clarify how Portugal's golden visa can work. And on behalf of SJF, thank you again, and look forward to staying in touch and supporting you in your immigration journey. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. It was a pleasure.
Thank you. It was a pleasure. Thank you. Mm-hmm.